And that is my take. And for the purposes of our radio audience, what you have seen has been slides developed by the Occupy Ghana and telling you why it's such a crying shame that we should be going to the IMF when what we are asking from the IMF, we have that right here in our country. In fact, if the Auditor General alone will recover monies misused or stolen from its own reports, its own findings that have indicted persons, entities in that regard, from 2016 to 2020, we will be getting over or about 48 billion Ghana cedis. 48 billion Ghana cedis. That has to be recovered to chest. What we are seeking from the IMF is equivalent of 16 billion Ghana cedis, meaning this is almost 3 times what we are going to the IMF begging for. But there's a new revelation. This time, the amounts involved, misused, stolen, whatsoever you want to call it, is 17 billion Ghana cedis. That's more than what we are going to the IMF to save our country and our economy from collapse. So what exactly is going on? Who is not doing his work? Why are the thieves not before court? So that's by way of my take, and thanks very much to Occupy Ghana, who have been on these beats for always. And for those of us who pretend that we don't see what Occupy Ghana has been doing, in the course of this show, we'll show you the tons of correspondence between Occupy Ghana and the Auditor General's office and the responses that have come forward. Thank you very much. My name is Samson Lardy Anyenini, and this is Newsfile. It's a special edition dedicated to the Auditor General's report. We have specially invited the Auditor General to make an appearance on this show through us to help account to you and explain to you why he has not been using the power of surcharge, disallowances, and surcharge, which is the reason the Citizen Coalition is going to picket at the Auditor General's offices on Monday from 9 a.m. Until they've been able to bring sufficient pressure on the Auditor General to simply do his work. After Occupy Ghana won that judgment in the Supreme Court, which led to processes, including Occupy Ghana assisting the country to develop the rules for people who are dissatisfied with surcharge to appeal to the court, like Senior Minister Yao Safumafo did. That's the law they use. Occupy Ghana birthed that law, literally forced it, after it got the Supreme Court to give a judgment favorable, empowering the Auditor General to disallow and surcharge the misuse and stolen money from the state, from its audit reports. Domelevo coincidentally got into office at the same time and was happy and used that law. And the government, Ken Ofori-Atta, President Akufo-Addo, were full of praises at the beginning when the romance was there, so to speak. because he managed to recover in excess of, is it 67 million Ghana cedis for us. At least that was some effort. This Auditor General, for some unexplained reasons, has not used that power. So your money is going into a bottomless pit. And those who, quote unquote, steal the money are walking free. Absolutely nothing is done to them. So that's the question we are asking this morning on the show. And I am excited to have joining me in the studio Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante. He is Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Ghana. Joining us via Zoom, Kweku Asare, is fellow CDD Ghana and D&D fellow for Public Law and Justice, Professor Stephen Kweku Asare. You know him as Azar. Dr. Eric Odro Osai is Director General, Internal Audit Agency. He should be with us here in the studio. And a simple question to him is what we asked him the other day. They are supposed to ensure that it doesn't get to this. By the time the Auditor General comes into the picture, all the loopholes have been plugged and stopped. Those who may have, stolen money would have been caught already. So what is it that they're doing in their job as the internal auditors? We have Dr. Daniel Appiah, he's lecturer, Department of Public Administration, University of Ghana, Business School, and political governance expert. We have Professor Godwin Awandare, who is Pro Vice Chancellor in charge of Academic and Student Affairs, University of Ghana, who should be supervising some, occasion, very important occasion for students to this morning. Dr. Norris Bequing is University Relations Officer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Dr. Ahmed Jinapo is Deputy Director General, Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, and Justice Kofi is President, Judges and Magistrates Association. I suppose you will appreciate why the list is this diverse. When it comes to the judges, you have heard the story of the auction cars that apparently, according to the Auditor General, were auctioned without the requisite approval. And Ghanaians are livid, and they say the judges have been engaged in a most immoral conduct by buying back vehicles that were bought for about $150,000, if you like, and then after 3-4 years, they are buying it back for less than how much? $5,000? Then the university, dons who are joining us will also answer questions, because the Auditor General has gone beyond just looking for where, there is pillage, misuse, and the rest of it, and theft, and has discovered that many of your degrees, your PhDs, your master's degrees have not been accredited, and these universities have been running them. So how do they also answer to that? And then Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, of course, you know that he is with CDD and with the Citizen Coalition. They have been chasing the Auditor General. Occupy Ghana is also in that coalition, and have decided that this Monday they will picket at the Auditor General's office. Not they, all of you are invited. I will be there. We need to let the Auditor General know that he's our employee and he must do what we know in the law he's been mandated to do. We understand, according to Occupy Ghana, that if they don't do what they are supposed to do, Occupy Ghana may go back to the court, this time to cite him for contempt of court. And particularly in this regard, because it's a Supreme Court decision, to not obey a Supreme Court decision can get you into a crime known as high crime, which has very serious consequences. So that's it. Right. So thank you all so very much. Doc, thank you.
Good morning.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us via Zoom. Professor Godwin Awendare, we will take a quick break. We'll come to you because we understand we're going to speak to you a little later, but we understand that you have a very urgent, meeting to attend to. So we'll come to you very briefly. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Now, let's get straight to Zoom and begin to speak with Professor Awendare so that he will be able to attend to his program. Prof, thank you so very much this morning. And this time around, the Auditor General's report for 2021 has even gone to the Electoral Commission's offices, look beyond their finances, and suggest some people may read it to say that there's no one at the Electoral Commission who has declared their assets. I suppose that's not exactly what the report is saying, but we'll get into that. Because as you remember, at the start of the office of the EC boss herself, she had been found wanting. She had not declared her assets, and Shraj sort of pardoned her. Now, Prof, how come that at the University of Ghana, as many as 374 programs have their accreditation expired? We have a number of unaccredited programs at your university, 14 diploma programs, undergraduate as many as 80 programs, postgraduate as many as 23, and 67 PhD programs. How do you explain this?
Good morning, Samson, and good morning, everybody. So actually, the program that I have to go to is the graduation ceremony for our School of Law. So we're graduating students from our School of Law.
Great. And
I'm happy to let you know that the degree is fully accredited and accreditation is valid. So I think that it's important to put that out there so that, we know.
The School of Law, 1950-something and 60, before even the Accreditation Board may have been set up.
Yeah. So you are speaking to one of the issues that we are confronting, because some of these programs actually predate the accreditation board and the laws that have subsequently come. Now we're dealing with GTEC. We used to deal with National Accreditation Board.
That's right.
So yes. So in the process, there have been some lapses, and I think that we as universities we need to admit that and take responsibility for that. But in order to move forward, we need to understand the big picture of why we have these challenges so that the entire system can be reformed. So I heard your take talking about the Auditor General himself, who is making these charges, himself falling behind in his duties. So this is symptomatic of a general public health system, public service that is, not very efficient. Okay, and accreditation is a very bureaucratic process, starting from the university level all the way to GTEC. I think you should find a sample of a program and look at its life cycle of accreditation from when it began to when it got accreditation. You see that it takes years for these things to be done. And so put that into the context that even when you get the first accreditation for a program is for only 3 years, which means that by the time you get accreditation, basically you have to start the process all over to get re-accreditation or renewal, okay? So in the process, all the inefficiencies in the university system at GTech, or it used to be NAB, now GTech, all these things come to bear on the process. And so the accreditations, what we call re-accreditation, which is basically a renewal of the accreditation. So there's a stampede of programs which are going through this. And, you know, the inefficiencies come to bear, and then you have these lapses because the program has not achieved the renewal in time before the previous accreditation has expired. So if you look at many of the programs that have been listed for UG in particular, most of them expired around 2018, 2019. And if you check, many of them are in the process of being renewed. So they've submitted documents to GTech and they're at various stages of renewal. So we accept responsibility and we are putting in place internal structures to try to make this work better and make it more efficient. For example, we've now created an accreditation desk at the office of the registrar who works with my office to sort of fast track the process and ensure that communications are not lost in the process. I mean, there were instances where letters would come from GTech and they are sent to the department, others are sent to the registry, some are sent to the Vice Chancellor's office, and then several months go by and the letter doesn't even get to its proper destination for the needed action to be taken. And so we've tried to streamline all these things. And we've been working closely with GTech. Dr. Jinabo is on the line. He would confirm that. We have had several meetings with them, and we have accepted the gaps, and we're trying to bring everything to regular. So I think rather than us apportioning blames, I think we should share responsibility and dig ourselves out of this problem.
Yes, we hear you accept blame, but how do you explain what has happened? It doesn't look good on you.
Well, that is true. It doesn't look good on the whole country. These if you go to any university, there will be these situations. You know, it just happens that the University of Ghana, KNUST, we are the big boys, so we get targeted. But if you go to any university, even small universities that have only a few courses to accredit, some of these problems do occur. And it's because of what I said. It's a very bureaucratic process and it takes time. And there are challenges along the way. And we need to work together to remove these challenges and ensure that the system can cope with the huge numbers of programs at the tertiary level that we have now. If you go back just 10 years, there were far fewer programs, far fewer tertiary institutions in Ghana than we have today. And so the system has to cope with that. And we need to put in place more efficient processes, both at the institutional level and at GTech, to ensure that these things are going on much more efficiently. And we also have to look at some of the regulations. For example, the accreditation for 3 years. Can we change that to 5 years so that there's enough turnaround time for re-accreditation to be done before the programs expire? Can we do a lot of this online? You know, can we move a lot of the paper, pushing of paper? Can we move a lot of this to an online-based system to make it more efficient? You know, can we simplify the re-accreditation so it's not as tedious as the initial accreditation? You know, there are things that we are discussing with GTech, ideas that we're discussing with GTech about how we can improve the entire process and make it more efficient so that we don't come back to this situation in a few years.
You said a while ago that now you have set up a setting desk to ensure that this does not recur. When did you set this desk up?
So this was set up, you would realize that most of the management of the University of Ghana were pretty new. So the Vice Chancellor started in October or so. I came in January. The registrar came in last August. So, you know, we've inherited these problems, and we've been trying to get everything back on track. So we appointed this accreditation officer in March, and she has since been working with the units to streamline the process. In addition, we are upgrading our academic quality assurance unit from a unit to a directorate, which will give it much more visibility in the colleges, and also hand over the accreditation duties to that directorate, so that, you know, they can coordinate all this across, you know, the university. One of the challenges was that the responsibility was left to the heads of departments to do this, and some of them obviously were not, you know, very efficient in getting their renewals done. So we would give this duty to the Academic Assurance Directorate to be formed, and that will allow a more streamlined process. And then we are creating a comprehensive database of all the programs that would have alerts in the system that will alert whichever head of department is responsible that it's time to start the process of reaccreditation, so that we don't get these gaps in the future.
All right. Prof, thank you so very much. We appreciate the fact that despite the fact that this morning you are very busy and you're supposed to be at this program right away, you made time to join us. Professor Godwin Awindare is Pro Vice Chancellor in charge of academic and student affairs at the University of Ghana. Thank you very much for your time, Prof. Now, let's just finish up with this issue before we move to the other matters concerning finances and the rest of them. And Dr. Norris Bekwing is University Relations Officer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Thank you for your time, Doc.
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to all my other panelists who are on the program.
Right. So only 61 out of the 360 programs that are offered by KNUST are accredited. How do you explain this?
Samson, I have to say that the whole issue of accreditation and reaccreditation is a process. And at any point in time, you will be having, as Professor Wandari said, you will have some programs that are expiring, others which are being mounted new. So a lot of these, how do you call it, maybe infractions that we can call it, are programs that we are seeking reaccreditation for. And so if we are to go, as Prof earlier on alluded to, if we are to go straightly by the current regime and the current, how do you call it, structure, which is being operated by GTEC, I'm sure something, all the universities in this country would have closed down. Because, you see, KNUST alone is running over 520 unique programs. So, you see, and when you go to GTEC, for instance, you have one schedule officer in charge of maybe KNUST and some other 3 of universities. And they are supposed to be making sure that once you put all your documents together and send it to GTEC, there's a need for, how do you call it, the GTEC to empanel what we call assessors to assess these programs. Look, I have been head of quality assurance in a small university where we're running about 30 programs. Even at that small university, we're having a lot of challenges because of the bureaucracy which exists. And so when a program is already running, and as I said some time ago, I think somewhere last week or within the week, that these programs, some of these programs have been running before even the setting up of National Accreditation Board and GTEC, and now what we call GTEC. And so if we are to say that these programs are not, or we don't have accreditation for this program, then that will be a misunderstanding of the issue. If we are seeking reaccreditation, what do? Do we have to stop the program from running and ask all the students to go home? Something, I know. You see, for instance, you have first years who are running, who are on a certain program. second years are on it, third years are on it. So what do? Do we wait for GTech to give us accreditation certificate before we continue to run those programs? Or we close down the university and say, all of you go home, let's wait. So what I want to say this morning is not to apportion blame, but to see how we can make this process a bit more seamless and faster. And for me, I was saying earlier on that there's the need for us to decentralize GTech, where we can have regional offices in each of the region. There's the need for us, as Prof has already said, to employ digitization or like digitalize some of these processes to make it quite easy for us to accomplish. Otherwise, every year, Auditor General will flag some of these things, and all of us will come back here and be discussing the same issue.
Well, when you start a program, for example, they need to physically come and inspect to be sure that your library is well equipped, you have the relevant books before you do that. How do you think that can be digitized, so to speak?
No, that is for new programs. When you are mounting a new program, that's where they have to come and then inspect and do all these things. But at least after inspecting the program, all these things, and then you have given approval. If we are seeking for re-accreditation, I think there should be much more easier way of doing this. Again, if we have regional offices, then the personnel are closer, or the office is closer to some of these universities. It is easier for GTech to move from maybe an office in Kumasi to come and inspect offices and other resources which are needed in these universities than to move all the way from Accra. Currently, all of us are having to go with piles of documents. As I speak to you right now, we have over 478 applications, which is with GTech. And when we have to carry all these things in a truck or in a bus. And these are all hard copies. You can imagine. And if you see the volume of even one document for one program, it is cumbersome. And so we need to find more efficient ways of doing some of these things. Otherwise, I can tell you something. Next year, this time, we'll be here discussing the same issue.
Interesting. Let me, before I bring in Dr. Ahmed Jinapor, let me bring in Professor Kweku Asare quickly. And Prof, you would have heard Dr. Norris Bequain suggest that to follow the law to the letter in the accreditation process is not in the interest of the universities that are running these programs. What do you say to that? Are they not expected to first comply with the law even before they mount the program? Please unmute your mic. Yes, Prof. No, we can't hear you. Please speak and let's see.
Samson.
Yes, you're on.
Good morning to you, panelists, and your viewers and listeners, wherever they might be. Thank you for having me. It's fascinating listening to my good friend, Dr. Daniel, and my good friend, Professor Wandere. The accreditation process can be analogized to the process of acquiring a passport to travel. If you don't have a passport, you apply for a new one. If it expires, you have to apply for renewal, and so on. Now, it is very difficult to get to Heathrow and to tell the immigration officer that, hey, due to some bureaucratic problems in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so on and so forth, my passport is expired, so allow me to enter your country. But they're not going to allow you. They're not going to allow you. So the difficulty we are having right here in Ghana is that the immigration officer, in our hypothetical example, allows the program to continue. In other words, there is no accountability. And if there is no accountability, then it's just like what we are going to be talking about every year, irregularities. Then we come and sit here and we talk about the irregularities. Next year we come back and so on and so forth. So we need to figure out how to go beyond making rules and laws to how to then enforce the rules and laws. In other words, we have to implement a system where if you don't follow a rule or you don't follow a law, there are consequences. If there are no consequences, then we are just playing games. Now, having said that, I'm also sympathetic to what they are saying, that there are some bureaucratic inefficiencies that can be improved. But before they are improved, you have to understand that the inefficiencies are there, and you have to plan your life accordingly. Therefore, you don't wait 1 week for your accreditation to expire before you start applying. Knowing that there are inefficiencies, you apply way early so that notwithstanding the inefficiencies, you get your accreditation renewed. And if you are starting a new program, don't start the new program until you've gotten the accreditation, because we are talking about existing programs. But when you read the report, there are a number of new programs that have not been accredited at all. And in the case of my alma mater, University of Ghana, there are about 180 cases that they don't even give a response to the auditor's query. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. So yes, I hear what they are saying, and I believe the systems should be improved. But before they are improved, we have to understand that this accreditation is your passport to travel, in this case, passport to run a program. And if you don't have it, then you can't run the program. And if you know that you can't run the program, that creates a new incentive for you to figure out a way to deal with the bureaucracy as efficiently and as innovatively as you can to make sure that these problems don't arise.
Dr. Kudjasante, I said I would just go to Prof and then deal with GTech. But don't you appreciate where the universities are coming from? Because there are also bureaucratic problems with the GTech itself. And like Prof said, the comparison he makes, if you have to do it that way, then it means the universities will also have to wait for perhaps years for a program they want to mount, just waiting for accreditation, which may not be ready.
Yeah, thank you. I think the fact that it's reaccreditation, and when you look at the Auditor General's report, I mean, the problem is really with the reaccreditation. But it's also important to make the point, and I think it's what Professor Sari said. We're talking about accreditation. It's important that you have a system for checking that the commitments you have made that allowed you to get approval to run the program, that you are still keeping them. So that the accreditation board or GTech now should be coming regularly, because if you go and, like they do it with political party assessments, you show your office, the next time, they go, nobody is there. So you need that system at least to make sure that the facilities that you have committed to are in place. Because at the end, you want the students to have quality education.
Right.
They are paying good money in a lot of these places now. So that you can't compromise on that system. But I ask myself some very simple questions, even in terms of correspondence. In our public system, do we have legislation addressing issues like electronic correspondence, for instance, that if I send an email, it is as good as I've sent a letter?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes,
so
we do. So
exactly. How then should we still insist?
Our problem is not lack of laws.
Exactly. Why should we insist that we have to carry correspondence from Accra to Kumasi or to UDS or wherever it is that we're doing, or so that somebody doesn't.
They're carrying truckloads,
yes,
like he says,
and somebody doesn't see it for like a month. And I mean, I experience that a lot. A lot of time you will get a letter from a public institution a month after the program has already, that. So if you don't get an email correspondence or the person doesn't send you an alert, you might not even be able to attend the program. So there are some very basic things that have to be addressed. And then even providing a process or a mechanism that says, yes, your application is under review, and therefore we are granting you that you can proceed, but you maybe after a month, if we don't come and do this, then you have to stop the program.
GTEC will tell us about that because
yes,
that facility exists.
So there has to be mechanisms that allow knowing the volume and so on. But certainly I agree. We have to move from this paper process. But not doing the accreditation is problematic.
All right. Dr. Dosa, do you have a sense that particularly our traditional universities, which apparently pre-existed, these regulatory institutions. When it comes to the GTEC, that's just a 2020 law that brought them into being. But of course, they took over the work that was originally being done by Accreditation Board and the rest of them. Do you feel they have a sense of, some sense of superiority, better quality, and therefore don't even see the need to take orders and instructions from the GTEC because they don't understand why you should be approving a program that I have a better expertise in determining that this program is what I need?
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. I think they have no option. They have no option because GTEC is a regulator, and GTEC merges the functions, previous functions of the National Accreditation Board and National Council for Tertiary Education. And they have no excuse also because GTEC has given them the mandate to also mentor other institutions in the sector, especially some of the private institutions. So they have no excuse. They are expected to operate a certain level of quality. So in agreeing with Professor Kweku Sari and then my colleague here, Kwejo, I think that we've heard everything that they've said. They have to put their house in order. Being the premier universities as they are, they should lead the way. I also agree that the National Accreditation System or the GTEC would have to also streamline their processes. And I think one of the contributors were trying to play down the importance of reaccreditation. It is very important because in the initial accreditation stage, you have certain key targets that you provide based on which the accreditation is given. So you need to come back and then report. Have you done tracer studies? The targets you say you are going to meet, were you able to meet? And all of that. And then are you going to have new challenges? And then what is the way forward? Is the program still relevant? Remember, GTEC is to ensure that programs that are run are not only relevant to the universities, but also relevant to the nation. So they should not put themselves above the law. In the case of the University of Ghana, I can see myself in there because I chair the audit committee. And I can speak with all authority that the current administration and the leadership is doing everything possible to sanitize the system. Yes, we are aware that they have elevated the quality assurance unit into a directorate. We are also aware that they have started processes of centralizing some of these reaccreditation processes previously being handled by the heads of department at the department level. But the point is they should respect state institutions. And the other side of it is that GTEC uses some of the professors from these institutions. So they feel they can do self-assessment, but that is wrong. Allow GTEC to engage you to go and do the assessment. So decentralizing it, review your operations, make sure that at least you make it seemingly less difficult for institutions, especially when you have given them a mentoring responsibility to mentor other institutions.
Okay. We understand that that's a mentoring responsibility too is becoming a cash cow.
It is.
Of the universities. They are making a lot of money out of it. Right. Now, let's get to speak to the GTEC and feel how they also feel about this. Dr. Ahmed Jinapo, thank you very much. He's Deputy Director General, Ghana Tertiary Education Commission. That is the GTEC. Let me begin by sharing with you what Professor Bar Boateng says. He says that the use of the word re-accreditation for courses that have been accredited since 1948, that for me is instructive, and has undergone through what is called re-accreditation every 5 years and expired a year ago and are still running but going through what is called peer review, cannot be said to be unaccredited. And he thinks it is a misuse of words. An accredited institution or program cannot be accredited again when the program has not stopped running for some time. So he shows us what happens in US and in Canada, Europe, elsewhere. Their courses undergo periodic peer review with a simple process. Doc.
Good morning, Samson.
Morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Right. So what is your question again? Put it, summarize it in a single sentence or relative to Professor Bar Boateng's.
So there's something he finds problematic. The university has been running a program for decades, even before the accreditation institution came in. And he says, for example, that once the institution and the program has been accredited, the use of the re-accreditation is sort of a misnomer. Elsewhere, they do a peer review through a simple process. Don't you agree? That's also accounting for the mounting number of programs that have been flagged as unaccredited.
Okay. So first of all, the simple answer is that I don't agree. And I don't agree because when I listened to Professor Awandare, the Pro Vice Chancellor for UG, and my good brother Daniels, I think there have been instances where the commentary has been that these institutions predate even the accrediting agency, who today is GTEC. But they fail to understand that even before the coming into being of GTEC, with the establishment of these institutions, there were accrediting processes or mechanisms for accrediting the programs. For instance, if you take University of Ghana did not just start on its own. It was mentored by a university in the UK before it had its form of autonomy. Even with that autonomy, there are means and processes of ensuring that there is quality assurance. So accreditation is not just a body which is seen to be that you are doing the right thing or not, but the whole essence of accreditation is quality assurance. And let me go back to my good brother, Daniel, Dr. Norris. Norris makes the point that at least if accreditation is extended to about 5 years or 10 years, so to speak, coming from a university which understands what quality assurance is, to the extent that when you are given a first degree, which is a 4-year program, you don't go into the institution, wait till the end of the 4 year before you write exams. We have something called continuous assessment. We have mid-semester examination, we have end-of-semester examination, and sometimes we even have end-of-year examination. So the whole accreditation process is something that is to ensure that whatever you said you want to do, you are doing it and you are doing it right. And even beyond just accreditation, Samson, it will interest you to know that there are other quality assurance checks that GTEC undertakes. For instance, we have something called academic audit. We have cyclical review. These are all continual quality assurance instruments that are put in place to make sure that the right thing is done. But let me answer the question that you posed to Professor Wandare, which I think is in the minds of most people. How did we get here? Samson, how did we get to where we are? If you remember, GTEC came into being just in August, and even in August 2020, it was a law that was passed. Effectively, GTEC had its board, or the governing board, sworn in just September 2021. Before the coming into being of GTEC, we had the National Accreditation Board. The National Accreditation Board had oversight responsibilities when it comes to accreditation and provision of quality assurance in terms of institutional programs and institutions itself. The simple answer is that with the mandate that was given to NEB, vis-a-vis the growth of institutions, especially within the private sector, and the increase in numbers of programs that were being run, NEB, by its enabling law and the powers that were granted it, could not execute successfully the oversight that was expected of them. That is why today we've moved from NEB to GTEC. And if you look at GTEC in its composition and the powers that are granted it, GTEC has that power to ensure that institutions that fail to abide by the accreditation requirements, those institutions can be held liable, and even the heads of those institutions can be put in jail for 20 years. So the point that I'm trying to make is that by the birth of GTEC itself goes to reaffirm the problem that we had, and GTEC in its place tends to address that problem. So when I hear people say that, look, GTEC is not doing its job, I think it is too early for such conclusions to be drawn. And there are so many measures that have been put in place to make sure that this backlog of programs that have not been accredited because of failure of adhering to the system are being addressed. Relative to the digitization, decentralization, Samson, I think it's instructive to note that when it comes to accreditation, accreditation is not something done by the Secretariat. So you have a program that is supposed to undergo accreditation at KNUST. Somebody like Professor Boku Asare can be picked to go and do a due diligence check on what KNUST is doing. If the suggestion is we need to decentralize it such that a program to be accredited at Kumasi Technical University will be evaluated by KNUST, it comes with its own problems. If you are not careful, you are going to have the system of scratch my back, I scratch your back. If you are not careful, we are going to have the problem of inbreeding. So I think for us, we've taken a number of steps to address the backlog that we have. The good thing is that the universities are very much in support and cooperating with us in addressing this issue. We've given ourselves timelines in getting the issues resolved. Once all these things are done, then I think that we are going to make sure we enforce the law as it is. You have been
blamed for being too slow.
Samson, we cannot be too slow when, as I told you, the commission effectively came in place in September 2021.
Yes, I'm speaking about the commission as a continuum, taking over from accreditation board
from the National Accreditation Board.
Exactly.
And that is why I indicated that the commission's coming into being is an acknowledgement of the problem that existed. And in fact, the steps that were taken to address these issues even predates the outdooring of the Auditor General's report. And if you realize, the Auditor General's report spans from 2020 to 2021. What I think we should be much interested in is how we can ensure that all these unaccredited programs, and when I say unaccredited, unaccredited is not a manifestation of just getting a certificate, but ensuring that whatever is being provided the student is one that is one that can meet the test of time. So we are working very hard to ensure that these programs get the accreditation that they need. But I think it is also important, and this goes to the communicators for the investors. Accreditation is not a one-stop gap exercise, where, as the gentleman said, you carry the documents and you send them to GTEC. GTEC just looks at them and tell you you're accredited or not. No, it's a process. Accreditation starts first from the institution. It goes to the commission. In fact, the commission, as a secretariat, will evaluate it if the institution has met the minimum standards. I, sitting here, do not have the capacity to determine if Legon is better prepared to run a law program. No, I have to get somebody from an institution that is at the same level, get somebody from UCC or from KNUST. And when I say somebody, I'm talking of a team. Getting this team together for them to look at the program give us a report. After the report, then it then goes to another committee, a committee of experts, which includes, as a matter of fact, most of the vice chancellors that we have in this country, before it gets to the board. So when an institution is granted an accreditation, mindful of the processes that it takes, Samson, the letter is very, very emphatic that you are supposed to start the reaccreditation process 1 year before expiration. So if you take a school like, let me finish on this one. If you take a school like KNUST, where you have your Bachelor of Arts Political Science, expired as far back as 2010, 12 years when it was given accreditation.
If you take the same KNUST, where they have an economics program, and which, they completed work that they needed to do, a year ago, and brought for the purposes of accreditation. They have not, as we speak, been written to about it, and yet this has been included in the list of unaccredited, programs. Is that fair?
So let's interrogate it this way. Number one, the economics program, when did it expire? That's number one. Is it a new program, or is a program that is supposed to be reaccredited? So we need to know when it's expired. That's number one. Number two, when it was sent to GTEC, and if it is true that GTEC has not acknowledged even receipt or taken any steps to ensure that the program is accredited, I think the onus lies on the university to follow up. Accreditation is to be owned by the university. You don't just apply, send it to the institution, fold your arms, start the program on the excuse that I've applied.
But when they send it to you, you must also do your job. They shouldn't be policing the process.
Samson, as I said, the responsibility lies on GTEC and the institutions to ensure that everything is done and done properly.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is that the institutions should not think that, quote and unquote, because of the inefficiency or ineptitude of the accrediting agency, because of that, I'm breaking the law and I'm going to run a program devoid of what the law says. If you have started the process and the process is incomplete, based on the fault of the accrediting agency, you have no right to start the program. But let me end on this note. It's been in the news that Legon, KNUST have about some 700 programs that are not accredited. In fact, some of them, as I indicated, dates as far back as 2010. There are calls by parents and people who are interested as to what will be the effects relative to the certificates obtained by students who have gone through the process. I must say that the law 1023 gives GTEC the power to determine the effective date of an accreditation. So there should not be any fear, or there should not be any mood of panic. All what we are interested in is that the infrastructure that was used by the institutions to deliver those programs and to award those certificates were fit for purpose, and they can't be accredited as such. So I don't think there's any need for anybody to be panicking that I've received a certificate that is deemed unaccredited. We are doing everything as much as possible to make sure that the quality assurance
that's appreciated. But for example, where the fault is yours, a program is brought to you for reaccreditation, and for 3 years or more, you haven't done your part. You cannot even activate the law in the manner you spoke about, punishing up to 20 years.
So Samson, let me be straightforward and let me answer this and let me put clarity to that. Whether it is the fault of GTEC or not, the institution has no right under the law to run a program. It is inexcusable for you to say, I applied to GTEC, GTEC slept on its job, and as a result of that, I'm going to run the program. The law is very clear. You are either accredited or you don't run. And I think you're a lawyer, you know better than I do.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that we can, but you agree that you subscribe to the proposals for ways to make things faster, including the digitization processes and so on, and getting your officers within the regions or closer to, especially these institutions. You could actually have you know, a team for University of Ghana alone, correct?
Yes, Samson, I totally agree with you that there's the need, and we would more or less try as much as possible to come up with innovative means. And I think the coming into being of GTech in itself is a reaffirmation of the evolution of our tertiary educational landscape, which more or less demands that we need to be dynamic. That said, we are in a problem as we speak. We have a number of unaccredited programs run by our top premier universities, KNUST, UCC, and LEGO. Our interest and focus is to see how we can work with these institutions to get the problems addressed. Fortunately for us, Samson, fortunately for us, the new crop of leadership when it comes to these institutions are very, very cooperative and understanding. I think Dr. Say made reference to the leadership at University of Ghana. We've met them in terms of face-to-face to address these issues. We've met all the leadership of these institutions. They are very committed, dedicated, and they understand and appreciate what it means for you to have an unaccredited program. And I think we should try as much as possible.
Some of them have raised issue about the fines that you are seeking to impose, the administrative fines. Are you going to insist on them?
Well, Samson, I think the most important thing is for us to get the issue resolved. And for us, you attest to the fact that most of these things even happen and predates the current leadership. We just want to make sure that we don't go back repeating these things as you alluded to when it comes to the Auditor General's report. We don't want to come back here tomorrow.
Doc, if you may answer my question directly, we understand that you need your IGF because, yes, but are you going to insist on this? Is it 6,000 per program or so? US dollars?
I think we are missing two things. The first, the $6,000 has to do with the cost for accrediting a program. And I use the word costs because what we do revolves around cost recovery. So Samson applies for accreditation at Joy TV. We get somebody from maybe City TV to come and see if what you are saying is what really is on the ground. So those people coming needs to be paid. But regarding penalty, when it comes to payment, as you are aware, we are a commission. The commission will be meeting on the 15th of September to address most of these issues. We'll bring it before the commission, whatever decision is taken, we'll communicate it to the schools. But we are more interested in making sure that we have the best and most attractive tertiary educational architecture in this country. And we'll make sure that this is done, and we'll do it with the help and support of the institutions.
It would be good to know if you have some timelines to clear all of these.
That is why.
What do you say to someone who informs me that he applied for a program abroad? He was refused admission because, you know, the program that he read at KNUST was not accredited. What should they do?
That is exactly what brought about the coming into law of the 1023. As I did indicate, the framers of that law realized that there was a bigger problem that needed to be addressed because the regulatory body, as at that time, NAB, did not have the enforcement powers. I think that needs to be emphasized. NAB did not have the enforcement powers. NAB had the powers to accredit. But if an institution is not accredited, what could it do? It could do nothing. The only thing it could do was to publish it in the newspapers. But today, GTech has the powers of enforcement by leveling penalties, and even as we said, you can be brought before the law.
So, is that something that this individual can do?
In the case of this individual person, the person, unfortunately, as you said, has been denied admission because that program was not accredited. I think as a commission, if we are petitioned, we can look at it at his petition. And as I indicated, when we talk of the commission is not just the secretariat headed by Professor Selufo and myself. In fact, most of the decisions are taken by a group of people who happen to be very, very well versed when it comes to university administration and governance. And let me state for the fact, Samson, that the GTech board has a permanent seat of Vice Chancellor's Ghana.
Okay.
The GTech board has a seat for Vice Chancellors for technical universities.
Doc, forgive me, but you say this person can petition you individually, or that they should rather wait for you to accredit the
No, they should petition us individually first. I think they can petition us.
Okay.
Yes, they can petition us for us to look at
what
it.
are the potential reliefs if one petitions you?
Well, we have to investigate the issue. First of all, the premise upon which this gentleman was denied admission was that the program that he enrolled was not accredited.
That's right.
We need to establish that. Because
yes, once it's established that, in fact, it was not accredited, it's one of these ones that have been flagged. What can the person get? Relief? What can they get?
As I indicated while I sit, I cannot take such a decision because such a decision must come from the commission. And we have, in fact, we have committees that deals with those issues.
Yeah, I just wanted to know generally, what do your rules say? Can the person get a certain reprieve by, a ratification of sorts?
Well, as I indicated, the commission has the powers of effecting when a program is accredited. But it's not just about the commission is saying that the program's accreditation starts 2020, but we need to make sure that the infrastructure upon which the program was run was fit for purpose. And that is the whole essence of accreditation.
Okay.
Accreditation is to ensure that quality is delivered and ensured.
Thank you very much. We have to take a break and come and discuss the other matters, about the wastage and thievery and misuse of money and so on. But Dr. Asante wanted to ask you one small question. If you can respond to that in 1 minute for me, sir. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. No, just a comment. I think it's important because of the international reputation of the organizations that whatever is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, there's a regular update and publication of these ratifications or confirmations and the updating of the list so that, people can feel a certain level of comfort with the current state of affairs. Okay. You agree to that?
Well, I totally agree with Doc. And I must say that the Commission attaches a very high sense of urgency in getting these issues resolved. In fact, we have the Accreditation Committee that normally meets 6 times in a year. We've tried as much as possible to push it beyond the 6 times. In fact, just yesterday and the day before yesterday, the committee met. Beyond that, we've been updating our websites as frequent as possible. As I told you, it's the commission or the board that gives accreditation. Post the unveiling of most of these unaccredited programs, we've had a number of visitations by panels that have gone through the programs of most of these institutions. The board will be meeting on the 15th of September. And once they give approval for these programs, we'll definitely and quickly update our website. But Doc, the truth of the matter is that I think what the Auditor General has done, unfortunate as it is, has reignited the discourse relative to accreditation and the importance that needs to be attached to that.
Right.
And I think that moving forward next year, we hope that...
perhaps if the Auditor General had not done this, would have continued here quietly, not done much work. Can you hold on just 1 second for me? Dr. Norris Bequing Dr. Norris Bequing and Dr. Daniel Appiah, I want to say something briefly. Please, can you be brief with him for us?
Before they say that, Samson, let me state it before they come in. We are not doing this because of the Auditor General's report, as I indicated. We started these processes way back, as far back as last year. In fact, somewhere in March, we published in the Daily Graphic and Ghanaian Times all programs and institutions that are accredited. So this Auditor General's report, as I indicated, has more or less reignited the need for that conversation.
Thank you. Dr. Daniel Appiah, let's hear you.
Yes.
Right. Samson, good morning, and good morning to panel members, and then good morning to our listeners too. I'm very happy that this issue of accreditation, reaccreditation is now at the forefront of public discussion, because for about 2 years, ever since I visited the website of GTech and saw that many of the public universities have majority or many of their programs expired. I started raising this issue right at the departmental level, school level, and wherever I had the opportunity. And so I'm very happy that this discussion has come. I think there are two major issues too that we need to look at. And I'm very happy that Dr. Ahmed Jinapor has raised the issue about when the current board of GTEC came into office. Because Samson, in November 2020, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, that's the former Minister of Education, inaugurated a board for GTEC. And from November 2020, and then you look at the time that they spent in office, barely about 1 month before we went for the general elections. And so they were in office for about 1 month. Then we went into the general election, and then per the Transitional Provisions Act, their term expired. And then it took about 10 months or so for now a new board to be constituted. And if you look at the accreditation, the roadmap for accreditation that has been published on the website of GTEC, you know, it is the board that really has got that kind of authority to consider the reports that the accreditation committee submits to the board. And so even if the accreditation committee gives a green light to an institution to continue running its program, but the government has not inaugurated a board, and it takes about 10 months for a board to be inaugurated, then it means that legally, what the board is supposed to do, and giving that legal authority to the institution, that process will continue to stall for about 10 months. The question that this raises, and which I think will also be relevant for other discussions, is whether when it comes to this professional work, like the accreditation and re-accreditation of programs run by universities, whether we need a politically inaugurated board to play this important role of giving an approval of work that has been done by a professional accreditation committee. You know, so we need to look at the political angle, because it's the same NPP government, but then once the first tenure of NPP government expired, then that board that had been sworn in for just a month, now their tenure expired, and then a new board, now it took 10 months for it to be expired. So as we move forward, we need to revisit that issue and then ask ourselves whether really we need a politically inaugurated board to play a role, as we find in the GTEC's roadmap to accreditation. It has got about 12 or 13 steps that we need to go through. That is one. Okay. The second thing is I'm very happy that institutions like University of Ghana is now centralizing the process of accreditation. Because Samson, I remember far back 2019 when my HOD constituted a team to work on comments that accreditation has actually submitted to the department so that our one of our programs will be accredited. It took a long time for the committee members also to work. So I'm happy that Professor Awendare said, with the universities, we also have to take part of the blame or the responsibilities. Because as a lecturer, even if I dedicate all my time to improving administrative quality within the university, I dedicate all my time to improving the quality of teaching or teaching very well for 20 good years, the marks that I will be located or I will get from that exercise cannot ensure my promotion to the next level. So I'm very happy that now we have a quality assurance directorate that is going to handle that. And I think that GTEC should also be looking at that angle and making sure that the public universities and tertiary institutions have got a dedicated directorate, a centralized directorate that handles this. Because if you leave this now for department and then their lecturers to handle it, many will be asking themselves whether even if they dedicate all their time to doing it, whether it is really going to lead to their promotion. And also, I think that we've made some progress at the end of the day, but we'll need to look at the political angle of the constitution of the GTEC board as to whether it is relevant. And then secondly, for many of the tertiary institutions, the process of accreditation, we need a centralized unit that handles that and then liaises with GTEC. And I think we'll be able to progress. Thank you.
Dr. Norris Bequin, let's hear you.
Thank you very much, Samson. I'm sad this morning that, you know, I came on this program not to have a banter with the regulators because we have to be working with them. And Samson, let me say that we take accreditation issues seriously, which is why we have decentralized and even have a centralized unit. So if you go to all the colleges, we have what we call accreditation or quality assurance committees at the various colleges. who work and then make sure that they liaise with a centralized quality assurance office to ensure some of these things are done. Now, Dr. Jinapong made an earlier, admission that they had a challenge, or they have challenges, in which one of them was the constitution of the board and other issues. Now, how do you blame universities who have submitted over 478 document applications, and then you have not acted on it? We have written several letters of correspondence, and then you come and say that we are to blame and that we are not respecting GTech. The universities respect GTech. There's nothing, you see, because that is the law. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to comply. We will comply, but we need to understand that we have an international image of universities to protect. And so when we act in certain ways, or maybe through our actions or inactions, we have this kind of attack or seeming, lowering of the image of the universities, then we are going to run into problems. You see this student who is trying to get admission, you see the challenge that he's having?
Right.
Because somebody has published, or we have published that days, but we agree that we have genuine challenges. Samson, again, let me say, is there a way we can have maybe something like, provisional accreditation when documents are submitted, so that we do not run into some of these problems, or we are going to be going through the same problem, procedure, which I know that if we are to go by this, I'm telling you, by the end of this year, if we are not careful, we may not, or the board may not be able to accredit all the 478 programs, including the other ones from other sister universities.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Samson, can I respond to these issues?
If I can get you in a minute, please.
So very quickly, we cannot be successful in this exercise if we, the players, do not understand and appreciate the whole thing that we are doing. In the sense that when we talk of accreditation and where we are today, vis-a-vis the volume of work that have been received from institutions such as KNUST, and with specific reference to Dr. Norris Beque's 468 applications, we are here because the institutions reneged in what? Doing what they were expected to do. So
I don't agree wholly to that.
Please, listen, please. I was with your minister, I was with the Vice Chancellor of KNUST, as well as the Council Chairman of KNUST.
We shouldn't be doing this.
Please, listen, please. Samson, can you respectfully tell the gentleman to be decorous in the way we have this? We've had a very meaningful conversation. We were with the Minister of Education, with the Vice Chancellors of KNUST, UJ, and UCC, including their council chairpersons. And we've had a roadmap in addressing this issue. We've had a backlog. The backlog coming about as a result of a systemic failure. And as I indicated, the systemic failure is in affirmation of the coming into being of GTech. We've had a problem. We are trying to solve the problem. The problem can be solved through the collective partnership of the university and GTech. So if you tell me that this is how it is supposed to be done, if not, we are not going to get this result, then you are being overly,
thank you.
What do they call it? Pessimistic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Jinapong, Deputy Director General, Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTech. Dr. Norris Bequing, University Relations Officer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and also to Professor Godwin Awendare, who joined us earlier, Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana in charge of academic and student affairs. I believe that these issues ought to be resolved, and with the speed of light, sometimes it's difficult appreciating why things that look basic, in public office take forever to be able to accomplish, and we get excuses upon excuses. It's difficult to appreciate why a simple accreditation or reaccreditation process can take years and it's not completed. And here we are doing the blame game when students are suffering. Someone is applying to a university out of the country. They've been denied simply because of this. Well, that's also a caution to you. When you're applying for a program, you may want to check if it's been accredited or it has not been accredited. I was privileged to sit on a board to check on affiliation of a university that wanted to run a law program at the University of Ghana School of Law. And I don't believe this. We were served the documents ahead of the meeting, like 2 weeks or so. We go to the meeting, we know what we have done. Within an hour of discussion, that matter is dispensed. We are done. But these matters take weeks, years, and here we are complaining. I don't get it. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. This is a special edition. We are looking at the Auditor General's Report 2021. And somehow the universities, traditional universities, public universities featured. And we had to look at that very serious matter of accreditation of programs. Now, we will deal briefly with the matter of the judges and the cars that were auctioned to them that the Auditor General flagged as having been done unlawfully. And then we'll go into, call it the bigger picture. If you look at the moral question, there are some who say that's even an even bigger picture of the other expenses, the other ministries, and so on. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa. Strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Ashesi University, that's where they have the ethical code. The students sit exams without invigilators. And Manasseh Azura Awina was speaking at the 30th anniversary of the University of Development Studies, UDS, as they also launched an ethical program this week. I was also privileged to be one of the speakers. And Manasseh asked the question, if we don't know how serious the problem of ethical conduct is in this country, we should check what is happening even at Bible colleges. The pastors, they write exams with invigilators because they cheat. It's also brought to you by Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Fenat, Ghana. Think wood, think Fenat. Duraplast. How you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplast goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Hoptel, everything you. Mayway Insurance. Dial *165#. And on the MTN to join Mayway Insurance. The dial is *165#. That's it, and you are able to join. So let's again go to start with Professor Kweku Asare. Professor Kweku Asare has been very unhappy about the report regarding the judiciary. And in that part of the Auditor General's report, the Auditor General says unrecovered loans granted to staff of the judicial service. And it discovers that 158,000, was giving us loans and has not been recovered. So what did the Auditor General do? Recommended that the Judicial Secretary should liaise with the Comptroller and Accountant General to have the loans deducted from the salaries of the staff. But this is the part that angered many Ghanaians, and the judges, through the Judges and Magistrates Association, has also been reacting. Auction of official vehicles without authority. That's in excess of 1 million Ghana cedis. Says that the examination that it did of the records of the transport unit for 2021 revealed that 19 official vehicles were auctioned by the service for 1 million, just a bit more, without approval from the Minister of Finance. Details are as follows, and we would show them on the screen. But the reason people are angry includes the fact that, for example, this is a Toyota Land Cruiser, and the registration is a 2017 registration, and it was sold for 57,000. Then there's a Toyota Land Cruiser, which is 2017 again registration, 67,000. There is a Toyota saloon car, Avalon. It's 2014, 27,000. You have a Toyota Corolla, 2013, 9,000. You have a Land Cruiser, 2017 registered, 75,000. That's how it looks. There's a Corolla, also 2013 registered, that's 8,000. There's a Land Cruiser, 2017, that's 67,000. The list goes on, and there are even, smaller figures for some of them. Fortuna, Toyota Fortuna, these SUVs going for 60,000, among others. The Auditor General's recommendation is that the auction should be nullified. The auction should be nullified and the vehicles recovered. Professor Kukwasare, you have been very angry about this. The judges say this is what has been available. It's not today. They simply made the application, the values were done, and then they got it. They had no say, sort of, in the process.
Well, Samson, let's not make it too much about this 1 million cedis, because we are talking about 17 billion cedis of irregularities.
Yes.
And as outrageous as this 1 million is, we're going to lose the big picture if that becomes our focus.
No, we have segmented this. We have segmented this. Let's deal with this quickly so that on the top of the hour, we'll go and deal with the bigger picture.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is a symptom of a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is everybody is taking something away from the public purse. And so unless you think about it holistically, let's address that, the notion that everybody is doing it, so I should also do it. Now, I'm a beneficiary of the farmers' toil. I went to school, good schools, St. Augustine's, St. Peter's, University of Ghana, paid very little to get the quality education. And after getting that quality education, if I'm put in an office and then the state acquires a car that costs about $150,000, and then 1 or 2 years, 3 years after the car has been used by me, somehow, because I am the elite or because I am special, I decide that something that the state acquired for $150,000. Remember where the money is coming from. It's coming from the cocoa farms, it's coming from the miners, and so on. And then I say, because I'm special, I have bought this thing, which is valued at $100,000 for $5,000. And then I convince myself that somehow it is all lawful. I mean, there's some loss of ethical leadership in this whole thing. So the ethics alone should prevent such things from happening. But in this case, it's worse because as you read the Auditor General's report, the emphasis is on the unlawfulness. The Auditor General is not even talking about the valuation, as ridiculous as the valuation is. He's talking about the unlawfulness because the approval process for that boondoggle was not even followed. Somebody just got up and said, well, here, go, take it. It's 100,000, pay 5,000, drive it home. And then you look at that audit report, and then what is the Auditor General recommending? Something, the auction should be nullified. Well, the car is gone maybe 2 years ago. Nullifying it, what does it entail? The proper thing to do is to say, look, there is a loss to the state because you've taken something that cost 100,000, that has a value of 100,000 to the state, and you've sold it for 5,000. You've taken $95,000 from the state. If the secretary or the file clerk took $500 or 500 cedis in interest and went to this judge, and the judge will put him in jail for 20 years. But because the judge is able to clothe this thing in auction of state vehicles, an auction that is available to only him, he's able to buy something that costs the state 100,000 or has a value of 100,000 for 5,000. If indeed it is legitimate, why don't you open this auction to every Ghanaian so that the poor farmer can also buy this TLC, Toyota Land Cruiser, for $5,000? Why is it only limited to some special Ghanaians to transfer that amount of money to them? To me, it's a huge, huge, huge problem. And it's almost unfair to just limit our focus on that.
Yes,
because we have 17 billion cedis.
Yes, but Prof, the question that comes up is that this is not new. This is the norm. And the auction is not made a public auction because you use the car and then you are made to buy it by yourself. And it is in the public service. It's not only limited to judges.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
It's the norm, it is done. But what I'm telling you is something that is unethical and is wrong merely because these people have power, merely because they have captured power, they are transferring wealth to themselves. I remember in 2006 or something like that, I can't remember now, the years have gone by. I went to Shraj on a similar issue, MP cars. They will give, at that time, I think they were giving them loans of $30,000 or whatever it was. And I petitioned Shraj and I said, look, this is just a disguised transfer of funds to the MPs. And you can Google that. Shraj agreed with me. So many years after, the 30,000 has grown to 100,000. It's the same scheme. And what I'm suggesting is, as long as we continue to think these things are legal and can be done, then we must understand that we would always be going to the IMF. Because what we are doing is, I call it post-revenue collection losses. After we've collected the revenue, we figure out ways to share it to ourselves. Some very few people using different tricks. One of them is you can buy your car that you use for 2 years, which has a value of $100,000 for $5,000. Another is you can give a loan to somebody and then you don't collect it. And so on and so forth. So there are all these schemes in the report. And the Auditor General should do more than just document and memorialize this. He should disallow and surcharge. Moreover, if you look at this particular transaction, it was unlawful. Read the Public Financial Management Act. It says that if you don't follow the Public Financial Management Act, it is an offense. How many of these people are actually going to be put on trial because of this offense? They have a nice paragraph in there. It's an offense, and then you would pay 20,000 penalty units for 6 months in prison, and so on. It's all elegantly crafted, but never enforced, because the system has been reduced to take yours and I close my eyes. When I take mine, you close your eyes. That's what is going on. And this, anybody who thinks this is okay because it's being done system-wide is not understanding the problem. The problem is because this is being done system-wide, that is why we are suffering. That's why we are going to IMF. That's why all our problems. That's why the hospitals don't have drugs. That's why the roads are bad. And the only way we are going to stop it is to stop agreeing that it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to sell public assets at that reduced prices. That's the bottom line here.
Thank you. Let's hear you briefly on this so that we will now move on to, the bigger picture of the 17 billion that Professor Kweku wants us to move in quickly. Yes, Dr. Santi.
Yeah. I just, because we're going to go into that bigger point, I'll come back and read Section 96 of the Public Financial Management Act. But two things. If you just track the anatomy of what has happened, right? The person who has to make the decision that these cars basically have reached the point where they should be auctioned. That's where the first problem you have there. And then the valuation. Now, I know because even
educate our audience.
Yes.
You just said something. You didn't say who is it, who makes the decision.
Yes. So it
has to be auctioned.
In the private sector, your HR or somebody will be the one that is responsible, or your financial accountant or whoever. But they have to make a determination that are these assets where they are or within the rules. And the person, of course, has to follow the rules. So in this case, you need some fiat from the Ministry of Finance to dispose of that asset. So if that person doesn't follow, the Public Financial Management law is very, very clear. There are penalties that the person... So this is like the perfect example of why surcharge powers are there. And actually, the surcharge powers is not only for the Auditor General, but also the Minister of Finance also has surcharge powers. So when you don't... These systems have been designed for a reason. And any time that we treat them as suggestions, as Professor Sari keeps saying, then we undermine the entire system that we have put in place. And in this case, for me, STC valuation, even for private people who go to STC, when you see the valuation, you are asking yourself, on what is their benchmarking? Because every STC valuation I've seen is the lower if you compare it to what else is out there in the market. It's so far apart. But once you bring an STC valuation, say, well, it has been determined, STC is the one that is the preferred whatever, and therefore we have gone according to the rules. So why are you making... so somebody even has to be asking, how does STC set its valuation for these assets of the state, which is so different from what is on the market?
So they would have evaluated, examined the car, and people are angry about the 2018 cars, yes. 2019.
For Land Cruiser.
Toyota Fortuna vehicles. For example, there's one Toyota Fortuna, I will not bring the registration number, just is that it's registered 2018, and it was sold for 87,000. Then within the same time too, you have another one, a Toyota Land Cruiser, 2019, and it sold for 123,000. So that's an appreciation. There's also a Toyota Fortuna, 2018, but it sold for 107,000. So you can see that there's some trend to show you that it's not the case that all of the cars are just being sort of giving away.
I mean, I said anybody, you can Google Tonaton or whatever, and any of these cars. And they are, of course, you need to see the assessment of the condition of the car and all of those things. But if these are cars that are used by judges, I have to say, I don't think it would have even the mileage that most cars would carry. But I think the point is that there's a problem with evaluation, whether it is the customs one, the allocation cars that are given by customs, or anywhere you see an ST evaluation. It's so far apart from anything that anybody knows. And nobody has questioned why we should be getting such valuation from STC. And I think that is part of the problem. If at least, let's say the law states, at least the valuation must be consistent with what is in the market. Or even there's going to be a discount, the basis of that discount has to be made clear. Is it 10% or 5% or whatever? Okay. At the moment it is, as Professor Sari says, it's basically just
the other question some have been asking has to do with some of these judges are still sitting as judges. So what was the need for the vehicles to be auctioned to them? There are a couple of them who are retiring. So they are retiring, so they go with their vehicles, so to speak. So some felt that could be, if you like, call it some ex gratia for them. But those who are still there, perhaps the person is in the Court of Appeal and went to the Court of Appeal a year or two ago, got the vehicle, and then in 2 years' time, they are moving to Supreme Court. So it gets auctioned to them, they go to Supreme Court, they get a new one. Is that what is going on?
It's like the MPs who may have been there for 6 terms, who get their ex gratia and their car allowance, and they buy one Land Cruiser and one saloon, and they come back to Parliament, get another car allowance for one. And we're talking about 4 years. If you buy a Land Cruiser normally has a longer shelf life. By the time you do 5 terms and you are buying at that's why there are cases where people need to sell them off and you almost become a car salesperson within that. But there's obviously, I think, as for perks of office and all of that, yes, we can settle on what is practicable, what the state can afford. It is really the rules and the rationale behind the rules and the discretion when you are exercising the rules, as you were saying. What informs you for you to dispose of an asset that may be 3 years or 4 years old? What is the basis on which that itself, as the public financial, your rationale, all of that has to be documented and properly regulated. Otherwise, I can come today and say, 1 year old car, I think we have decided, as we have decided to auction it, and that's the only basis on which we proceed. So that has to be addressed, and it's a systemic problem.
Prof's view, as many, if you have followed social media and even in the traditional mainline media, is that this must stop. Yes. We should just stop this process. But not only to judges, like the whole public service, it should stop. Is that what you say?
Yes, but the point is, we have to look at, sometimes I don't even know where the law, but you go, whether it's civil service or the Public Services Commission or even the particular entity itself might have rules, related to this. So you almost need to have a complete overview of the entire system to make sure that nobody can find loopholes, because sometimes you even pass the law and then somebody will pull a legislation and say, no, in our context, the law still allows us to do this. So it's a massive job, but it is something that we have to deal with, because at the moment, there's all this discretion within the system, poorly regulated, and just people making choices. And of course, most of the time, it is for their private interest. It's not, inures to the public.
I'm made to, let's hear you.
Yes,
I'm made to understand that saloon cars are depreciated by 25% annually. And after 4 years, it has no book value. But the 4x4, they differ. I hear it's 6 years or 8 years. So how do we go about it? And some of the professionals who are talking to us are still saying this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Customs does the valuation of vehicles for us. Yeah. Why don't we go to customs, but we go to STC, and somebody says go to STC for these ridiculously low prices?
Samson, you see, accounting policies differs from institution to institution. So I don't want to comment on the depreciation rates. But what we should understand is that in the case of the judiciary, as part of their conditions of service, duty post vehicles are sold to staff of the judicial service within a certain period of usage, whether you are in active service or you are leaving the office. What we should also know is that in the public service, a lot of people do not know that even before you can do an auction of vehicle or sell it as a duty post vehicle to serving officers, you need the approval of the chief of staff. The ministerial approval under Regulation 158 of the Public Financial Management Regulation is a concurrent or a subsequent approval. In the specific case of the judges, I am informed that even the Judicial Council, there's a council of the Judicial Service, gave approval to that. It is not a mainstream auction as we used to know. Regulation 158, which was cited by the Auditor General, made reference to the principal spending officer not securing the required approval from the Minister for Finance. And the principal spending officer here is the Chief Administrator of the Judicial Service, who is the Judicial Secretary. Okay. So in my case, in my view, I think that is the more reason why the Auditor General is clear and categorical that in the absence of this approval, we should nullify the entire process. The Auditor General knows very well that this approval can easily be secured. So then, the Judicial Secretary would have to secure this approval. My other concern is that he did not fault the process. And everybody is saying that the values are ridiculous. In the scheme of things, as far as public service is concerned, the valuation, government valuer is STC under the circumstance. Right. So if we want to see competitive valuation processes, then we have to review our laws. I do not think that the judges mentioned here have committed any crime at all. It's part of their conditions of service. If anything at all, the blame must be laid squarely at the footsteps of the principal spending officer who failed to secure the ministerial approval. That is what I think we should be doing. As for the values, once the Auditor General did not question this, I don't have any basis to question it. But I think that those who have problems with the valuation, then they should also encourage a review of the public service regulations so that we can have other competitive institutions valuing public vehicles. Other than that...
But Doc, the STC as the government valuer, it's like any other valuer. Don't they follow principles in valuation? How is it that their valuations tend to be so far apart from any other valuation you will get of a property, of an asset? You see,
the sad truth is that you are not allowed to take it to any other valuer than the STC. That's the challenge.
But what is the STC using?
As the STC makes us believe that they are using standard valuation procedures. And because they are provided for in law, that's why I'm saying that we should liberalize the system, open it up, and allow other institutions to come in. But insofar as the Auditor General...
But you don't subscribe to the call, which has become an annual ritual, so to speak, that at least every 4 years, that we should scrap this kind of policy. In fact, there are certain, presidents who have attempted that policy, that you don't take these vehicles with you after you are done your service. I think at least not at the prices that public service officers do.
I'll subscribe to that. Except that I would say that we should also try not to demotivate public officers. Already, a lot of things are happening in the public sector. So, yes, we need some modification in that arrangement, that 4 years, 5 years, duty post vehicle, so that we have some people who are about going on retirement. They will acquire a vehicle 4 years to retirement, and they'll park it in their garage, make sure they don't use it. Within 4 or 5 years, they apply and then it is sold to them. So we need a comprehensive review over that whole regime. But but we should do it cautiously so as not to demotivate public officers. Else, if they know that they are not going to get the vehicle, they can have an alternative way of milking the states, and that will come to us at a higher cost.
Interesting. Prof, can we move on? Or you want to make a... do we still have Daniel on the line? Yes.
Yes,
please, let's hear you on this, then we take a break and come to the bigger picture.
Right. Samson, there are two key issues here. I think first, with the valuation, if someone tells me that there is a public vehicle that was bought in 2020, let's say Toyota Corolla, and that's at 2022, Daniel, we want to sell this to you at a price of 10,000 Ghana cedis. I will not be very happy. I will not quickly raise my hands in the air and then happily jump to issue 10,000 cedis to buy that vehicle. We all know how public vehicles and property are managed in this country. Go to the ministries, go to the various departments and agencies and look at the current state of vehicles that were purchased for these ministries and departments just last year. Go and look at the Stambik vehicles or minibuses that were bought for GPRTU to use just last year or even this year, and look at the current state. They have been misused. They are in a very deplorable state of wear and tear. And so I think that unless we have information about the state of the vehicles, we should not just look at the type or the model of vehicle and then be angry at the the prices that they've been valued. We need to look at the state, because as I said, you go to the ministries, departments, and agencies, go and look at vehicles just bought for them last year, and you feel very sorry. What is more serious about this matter is the fact that you have a referee going to officiate a game between two teams, and the referee is supposed to have knowledge of the rules of how the game is supposed to be played, and then the referee now tells you or finds himself on the field and tells you that I didn't know that these are the rules. Because the Auditor General is raising issue about the fact that the Judicial Secretary or the Judicial Service did not seek approval from the Ministry of Finance. The judiciary, the judges are there to interpret the rules of the game. And so if they bought the vehicles without taking a look at the processes, the procedures, the rules that were supposed to be followed, and then they did not apprise themselves of the fact that the final approval had not been secured and yet went ahead to buy those vehicles, then that is where there is a serious issue with this whole process. Because the referee who is supposed to interpret the rules of the game now saying that, well, the coaches said that we should play the game the way that they like. And so it was not really, it's not our fault for not knowing that the Ministry of Finance final clearance had not been secure and all that. That's when we can force them for it. And then we can all see that there is a serious issue there. So I think that's why the Auditor General did not go so much into the evaluation, but it's raising issues about now the final approval process that was not secure. So I think that the judges maybe should eat a humble pie and maybe concede that, well, if really it is the case that, as the Auditor General said, they did not get final approval before buying this, then they also maybe erred in that particular regard.
Yeah, their point is that, look, they are not interested in all that part of the face. All they know is that they've been notified that this is available. They just make the application. And then there's an assessment. They are asked to make a payment, and they make a payment. And then also what they pay is subject to duty, customs duty.
But Samson, is that how they determine cases in their courts?
No. If a case comes to a judge, then they will be seized with all the facts, and they have to do their work. But this is not a case coming before a judge.
Of course. And so the judge is the one who bought the vehicle. And so it is a case of a transaction coming before a judge. And so the judge is supposed to know the rules governing the transaction. And they cannot sit there and say, oh, we didn't know that the final approval should have been secured, because the judge is supposed to look at the rules, interpret the rules, come to a conclusive evidence.
Is that a fair demand on them? You are at the university, and your HR notifies you that this is a policy that is available and you can benefit. Your vehicle you have used.
About judges who are supposed to.
No, wait. I want us to look at it from the factual point of view and what the procedure is.
Yes.
And you make an application
Right.
that you want, the vehicles are being auctioned. You make an application that you are interested. Then they go do evaluation and bring you the price. Are you telling me that you go reading laws about whether or not somebody has got the approval, the HR got approval or it didn't get approval?
Well, yes, because maybe some of the vehicles might have been stolen from somewhere and added to what is being auctioned to me.
No. In
So
this case, the vehicles will be vehicles that you have been using. So there's no question about stealing.
Right. The Auditor General says that approval from the Ministry of Finance was not secured. And that was part of the process.
Was not secured by who?
Was not secured by the Judicial Secretary or the Judicial Service.
That's the point I'm making here.
Exactly. So you going to buy that particular commodity or vehicle should be interested in that process as well. Okay. Otherwise, then what is the use of their job when it comes to interpreting
I get your point. You are saying that the judges should ask the Judicial Secretary if they got the approval before.
Exactly.
Okay.
Before
Interesting
buying.
point. Interesting point. Okay, thank you very much. I was asking if Professor Kukwasa wants to say anything before we go on break.
No, I think we've exhausted the matter.
Okay. So we know that, like I mentioned earlier, we know that. Which president is it? I was trying to remember that had already, tried to disallow this process and said that this policy should not be maintained. I remember that of Mills. Then when
Mills.
again? Okay.
Using it in green number plates.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll take a quick break here. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And my attention has been drawn to look at Section 83 of the Public Procurement Act. And it talks about authority to dispose. And it says the head of a procurement entity shall convene a board of survey comprising representatives of departments with unserviceable, obsolete, or surplus stores, plant and equipment, which shall report on the items and, subject to a technical report on them, recommend the best method of disposal after the officer in charge has completed a board of survey form. The board of survey's recommendation shall be approved by the head of the procurement entity, and the item shall be disposed of as approved. Where the items become unserviceable for reasons other than fair wear and tear, such as through accident or expiry, a set of procedure established by the board for handling losses shall be followed before the items are boarded and disposed of. What do you say about this?
Samson, I think, let me explain that the PFM Act is superior to all other laws apart from the Constitution. In fact, Section 2, subsection 3 of the PFM Act is clear that where there is a conflict or inconsistency between the provisions of this Act and any other enactment, the provisions of this Act shall prevail. So what it means is that when you look at the PFM Regulation 158 on procurement, which the Auditor General cited, these things would have to be done, and then it will be added to the request to the Minister for Finance for his approval. So, for instance, Regulation 158, Sub-Regulation 4 of the PFM regulation is clear that the Minister shall not approve the disposal of any vehicle of a covered entity unless the B is saying the method of disposal is in accordance with Public Procurement Act.
Okay.
So the application and request for his approval should have had this Board of Survey report already complied with.
Okay.
And we should be clear that the public financial management is second to the Constitution as far as public sector financial management is concerned.
Right. And what I was trying to remember, apart from Professor Mills' time, when there appears to have been a temporary sort of, hold on these. The President Akufo-Addo in 2017, I think that was in April 2017, said, quote, "These are difficult times." No, he had actually suspended the process and, asked that the policy should be stopped. The government policy used to be that public officials could buy state vehicles that were over 2 years old when the officials were leaving office. However, it often became a politically charged issue whenever power changed hands. The exiting administration is often accused of selling state vehicles cheaply to exiting government officials. The arrangement had become a byword for corruption in the country to the extent that in April 2017, President Akufo-Addo banned such transactions. But can he ban it with his mouth?
Well,
or that he will simply ask the minister not to approve?
He will just ask the minister not to approve or advise the Public Services Commission to make sure that this doesn't happen, because it is part of the conditions of service. So it's just a matter of reviewing the conditions of service of public officers.
So he said, these are difficult times for the Ghanaian people. The policy that has worked so far, which is running into a lot of problems because of the way it had been abused, which is that officials can buy official cars. That policy will no longer work. No official is going to have the opportunity to buy his official car. So we put an end to it. The president told journalists after a minister's retreat at the Peduasi Lodge in the Eastern region. So what has happened? Maybe this has been reviewed and we don't know about it. Interesting. Now, let's go to the bigger picture and also ask the questions. Is the auditor simply just reporting these, misused, stolen, etc. funds to us, or he is recovering them? Now, I'll go straight to Professor Kokwasari again. So, Prof, let's get to the elephant in the room, so to speak. This is 17 billion of irregularities, quote unquote, and some would like to use the word stolen money from the state.
Yeah, Samson, one of the problems we have is that the Auditor General actually does not use a very easy to understand term. So what is irregularity? I mean, most people don't even understand it. And the problem that arises when most people don't understand it is that it gives whoever is doing the wrong, the tortfeasor, the person who is committing the wrong, it gives him a wiggle room to say, oh, well, I did it, but it did not actually result in any loss. But believe me or not, what we are talking about here is 17 billion cedis that has gone into private pockets. I put a formula the other time on my Facebook, which basically goes like irregularities minus surcharges equals private pockets. And it appears that for whatever reasons, the Auditor General, the current Auditor General, doesn't like surcharges. So surcharges have been set to 0. And if surcharges are set to 0, then the irregularities are going into private pockets. Look, Samson, the Auditor General, and let me back up 1 minute. This 17 billion, let's remember, is just the audit of the public boards, statutory institutions, and so on. There's another audit of the MDAs. The irregularities there, I believe, comes to about $1 billion. So there are going to be multiple audits of different public entities, and each of them will have its own irregularities. Now, when you read the report, one of the problems that we have is that it's a comprehensive audit. So the Auditor General is doing what we call a financial statement audit. He's also doing a compliance audit. is even doing an operational audit. And all of these things have their own outputs and outcomes. So if you are doing a financial statement audit, the emphasis typically is on whether there are errors in the reported amount or whether there are some fraudulent reporting in the financial statement. If you are doing a compliance audit, then what you are doing is to ascertain whether things done comply with some regulation or some law. And I believe the irregularities that the Auditor General used here conform to this latter definition or this latter activity, the compliance audit. So when you see irregularity, it is also the same as illegality. In other words, people have done something that is not allowed by the law. And financial irregularities basically is telling you or giving you a summary of the financial consequences of those illegalities. All right? So if you talk about debt management, for instance, the process by which public boards and so on give out loans or they sell to customers and they are supposed to collect the receivables. And you see that there's a big amount that, oh, well, we don't manage that well, so we don't recover. But the reason that is an illegality can be found in the Public Financial Management Act, I believe Section 68, or maybe Section 91. I don't have it in front of me. But that section imposes an affirmative responsibility on those who oversee these public boards to ensure that they are collecting monies that are due them. And if they don't, then they violate that section. Secondly, and one of the things that would not happen, I think if you look at Section 91.2, maybe read Section 91.2 if you have the time. Section 91.2 provides that public boards, public is the board of the public institutions that negligently or willfully do not collect these monies due them should lose their emolument. I've seen this problem for so many years, but I've never seen one board member lose his emolument. And now, when you talk about debt irregularities, they give you a big amount. And then you try to find out, well, why? Look at some of the reasons why they don't recover those receivables. There is no effective debt collection policy. There is no effective credit controls to recover their debts. Management is indifferent, or management maintains an indifferent posture towards loan recovery. There is improper maintenance of records on debtors. There's an absence of debtors' aging analysis, and so on and so forth. So what you see there is that this is not just negligently failing to collect your debt. This is actually willfully failing to collect your debt. That occasions loss to the state. So not only are you violating the Public Financial Management Act, and I told you to read the offenses, because every violation is an offense carrying its own penalty, and the Minister of Finance is supposed to surcharge them. I think that's 97. But it's also going into criminality because you are willfully causing financial loss to the state. And that character, what I've just described, the negligence, the willfulness, permeates all facets of the irregularities that are summarized under different headings. So now, when I read these things, I say to myself, well, look, déjà vu. These irregularities occur so regularly that it makes no sense for us to be calling them irregularities anymore. These are regular occurrences. For me, it's almost like post-revenue collection losses, just like we have in post-harvest losses. And when you put it together, you come to an inescapable conclusion that somehow the public sector has become a cesspool. I mean, 17 billion cedis in irregularities. Moreover, public financial management has become a vessel for transferring public funds into private pockets. It also reflects the Auditor General's failure to utilize his disallowance and surcharge power under Article 187 in contempt of the Occupy Ghana case. Because if you go to read the Occupy Ghana case, it says, even though the Constitution says the Auditor General may surcharge and disallow, the may here actually is mandatory. You shall. That is one of the learning from the Occupy General case. As a result of this, audits normally have a deterrence value. They deter people because you know the auditors are coming and you don't want to do certain things because you know they're going to find out. And if they find out, there's going to be consequences. But in our case, because there are no consequences, the audits have no deterrence value. When the auditors come, people just laugh and say, oh, write what you want.
Prof, what will you suggest should happen? Because the Supreme Court did not only hold, as you just said, that it is mandatory, but made consequential orders. And in those orders, it said, 1, as a sequel to our judgment just delivered, we further direct that henceforth the Auditor General shall take steps to recover the amount unlawfully expended from the person or persons who incurred or authorized the disallowed expenditure. 2, the Auditor General shall also take steps to recover the amount from the person or persons by whom the amount ought to have been brought into account. 3, the Auditor General shall also take steps to recover the value of the loss or deficiency. And that for me is instructive. You are either recovering the loss or deficiency from the person or persons by whose negligence or misconduct the losses or deficiencies were incurred, whether or not the person is a public servant. And finally, the Attorney General is ordered to take all necessary steps to enforce the decisions or steps taken by the Auditor General, supra, to ensure compliance, including, in some cases, criminal prosecution, end quote.
Absolutely. So it is very, very clear that the Auditor General can't just write to us that somebody took 5 million cedis that he was not supposed to take. He actually has an affirmative responsibility to do what he can to retrieve that and communicate with the Attorney General so that the Attorney General is also instituting criminal prosecution. And when this is not being done, then the Attorney General in normal circumstances will bring contempt proceedings at the Supreme Court or at the proper forum, saying that the Auditor General is not doing his job under Article 187.7 and under the Occupy Ghana case. But here, the Attorney General is slow to do it, and so it falls back on Occupy Ghana. So Occupy Ghana, you've got your judgment, now go and enforce it. But that is putting too much responsibility on private individuals who have very finite resources. Once they procure the judgment, then the Attorney General's department, there is a Solicitor General who is paid to do these things. There is a Director of Public Prosecutions who has a team of prosecutors who should be going around to do these things. And if they are not doing it, and the Auditor General is not doing it, then I guarantee you that next year, we'll be here talking about the same thing. And so I write here that the Auditor General's report has become an annual ritual, which reminds us that there's no accountability in the public space. Financial indiscipline abounds. Our financial management laws are observed in the breach. There is lack of ethical leadership, and the citizens are not doing enough to realize the promises of the Constitution, at least with respect to financial governance.
Right.
So Samson,
yes,
we have a problem. And citizens have to resolve that, look, this is not going to go. We've managed to convince even some of the citizens that there's nothing wrong with a public official buying a car that has a value of 100,000 for 5,000. I mean, very respected people in the society have been convinced that that is okay because it's done. We need to reset our minds and start being serious about protecting public resources because we just don't have enough and because the consequences of these leakages are debilitating. People dying because there's no oxygen, roads that are bad. I mean, so many public goods that we need, and we allow public funds to go into private pockets.
Right. So, Prof, my final question to you is, so I have in front of me several letters written by Occupy Ghana to the Auditor General, and they have gone beyond the office of the Auditor General, gone to the Attorney General's, office as well, issued various demands, various threats, among others, because they have been pushed. The Auditor General, in one of its reply to Occupy Ghana in July of this year, told Occupy Ghana that it said that the Auditor General was guided to develop a procedure of first issuing the notice of intention to surcharge before issuing the surcharge certificates because of the decision of the High Court in the case of Kroll Associates versus Auditor General Sylvester Mensah versus Auditor General Alex Nete versus Auditor General. Then he mentions others. These appeals were successful because the appellants were not given a hearing during the audit. This is to avoid such situations. It is worthy of note that the evidence required for auditing is different from evidence required by the court. Then the Auditor General returns again to tell Occupy Ghana that this is what it says, that the Auditor General has set up, this one, it was on the 14th of June, the Auditor General has set up a disallowance and surcharge committee which is working on the 2018 to 2020 reports. The committee is collecting evidence from the various audit teams before proceeding with the notice of intention to disallow and/or surcharge and follow it up with disallowance and surcharge certificates where appropriate. The committee has already concluded work on one special audit which spans from the period 2014 to 2019. The disallowance and surcharge certificates has already been issued. The statutory 60 days for appeal have passed, and the necessary documents have since been transmitted to the Attorney General's office for further action. Now, Prof, you take a pause there and listen to the Attorney General too, when they also wrote to Occupy Ghana. So Occupy Ghana had just been writing. They've just been harassing everybody who must take some step. On the 19th of July, the Attorney General writes to reply to Occupy Ghana and literally admits that the Auditor General has been tardy in the manner in which it is going about what it's supposed to do. Then it suggests steps that it was going to take. So the Attorney General said, I take due cognizance of significant tardiness in the processes to enforce notices of disallowance and surcharge issued by the Auditor General since 2016. So the Melevo surcharges, some of them are still sitting there. In order to realize the true import and effect of Article 1877B, let's ignore all of that, of the Constitution, there ought to be enhanced cooperation between the Auditor General and the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. To achieve this, I have set up a special team, specially assigned for the purpose of coordinating with the Auditor General and following up on all relevant information requested from the Auditor General since 2017. Action will be promptly taken to recover all losses the state has suffered as a result of the failure to receive the information. What do you say briefly?
Well, one of the things that fascinates me is there's never tardiness in auctioning state vehicles at reduced price. That is done with alacrity. But when we have to collect state monies that other people have taken, then there's tardiness. Why there is symmetry in tardiness is of concern to me. Look, they say they are doing something, and we have to accept what they are doing, but they have to accelerate it. And going forward, the evidence search for the surcharge must be done contemporaneously with the evidence search for the audit report. You cannot write the audit report and say X has stolen $500,000, and then now I have to go and look for evidence to surcharge him. That is doing it the wrong way. So the Auditor General has to reorient its technology so that when it identifies an irregularity, which means something done contrary to the law that has financial consequences, it also simultaneously collects the evidence to allow him to do the surcharge. Otherwise, we'll be in 2025, and then we are trying to collect funds due in 2016.
Thank you.
One of the things that your readers should know is that the longer it takes to collect something, then the higher the probability that you are never going to get it.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Stephen Kweku-Asare. And you must know that, this is one of his areas of comfort as far as accounting is concerned. So let me quickly hear from Dr. Daniel Appiah, Department of Public Administration of the University of Ghana Business School. Yes, the focus now is how do we just get these monies back? I think that's all Ghanaians are interested in. And Occupy Ghana did the calculation from 2016 to 2020. That gives us in excess of or about 48 billion. And we don't have record of taking the monies back, apart from Domelevo, who issued the surcharges and got some 67 million back to chest. Some are saying, this Auditor General, why doesn't he just go ahead and issue these things and let the people who are aggrieved go to court and fight? Because you win some, you lose some anyway.
Right, so Samson, reading the Auditor General's report and then the back and forth communication between Occupy Ghana, the Auditor General, and then the Attorney General makes one feel very sad, and one doesn't even know which way to go. Now, the question that you raised first is the Auditor General simply just reporting or recovering misappropriated funds? We had Domelevo, who was in office, and then he recovered for us some monies that had been misappropriated by certain people, over 67 million or whatever cities. And then we all are aware of the circumstances surrounding his departure from office. Then we got the new Auditor General, who came in first in an acting capacity. And now for us to understand why the current Auditor General has issued only one surcharge certificate compared to Domelevo's 112, we need to also take note of how he was appraised during the time that he was in an acting capacity. When he was in an acting capacity, and then the time that Domelevo was kicked out or his tenure was not renewed, and then the Ghana National Anti-Corruption Coalition went to the Jubilee House to go and then have some conversation with the president, maybe to reconsider Domelevo's tenure. This is what the president said, that the acting Auditor General, since his appointment, has demonstrated sufficient quality and independence of view. And this is August 18, 2021. Then the president went ahead. He says, for instance, the acting Auditor General, he is responsible for some things that are unheard of. In our history, the 12 statutory reports that have to be compiled and placed before Parliament in the year of Parliament, this is the first time that it has been done. Even the most touted Auditor General before him, referring to Domelevo, never managed to do it. But this one has done it. And so he was being praised not for recovering money. He was being praised by the president not for issuing surcharge. He was being praised for issuing reports. And it is continuation of the things that he was being praised by the one who appointed him in office. You know, there are political realities. When Domelevo left office, because of his stature, he could get a job now with the World Bank. And so if you have been appointed in an acting capacity into some office, and the one who put you there is praising you not for recovering misappropriated money, but then for issuing more reports, then I think that you will want to continue on that path to also secure your work. So at the end of the day, we have to look at the history. And I agree with Professor Kwekwasari that citizens and CSOs, we have to stand up. When Domelevo was being kicked out or his tenure was not extended, nobody went to picket at the Jubilee House. All the work that Occupy Ghana did, from now the rules of court committee, the rules that Occupy Ghana made, and then getting Domelevo and then the audit service now to move ahead to issue surcharges. At the time that Domelevo found himself in trouble, we didn't go to picket at Jubilee House. We didn't rise up to his event. We spoke a lot in the media. And now that we are getting reports,
okay, it's good you said we spoke a lot in the media, but there was yes. more than media advocacy. The CSOs were how many that came together?
300.
So there were at my last count because I was part of it, there were over 80 or so CSOs that came together to support Domelevo. They actually wrote, the presidency responded. Yeah. Eventually, they took up a suit. Yeah. There are some of them who still believe that even if Domelevo's, had reached a retirement age, for a government that is known to give people retirement extension, he should have been giving an extension because he was recovering money. So as for public support for Mr. Domelevo, he himself, 2 days ago, said that he had phenomenal public CSO support, including individual support.
Samson, I agree, but I'm saying that in political circles, there are certain strategies that tend to be more effective in the context of developing countries.
Okay.
If lecturers are not being paid, we don't sit there and just writing letters. If public servants are not being paid what is due them, they just don't sit there writing letters at the end of the day. If push comes to shove, you see them on the street demonstrating. And that is why on Monday, we are all going to picket in front of the Auditor General's office.
So Doc, thank you very much. See you Monday morning. Yes. So, Dr. Akudjo Asante, since the Citizen Coalition was launched, you have also been trying, because Occupy Ghana is part of the coalition. You have been working, trying to get to the Auditor General, want to sit down with him. I don't know if you're also tired writing the letters. That's why now you are hitting the streets.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. I mean, I am a very strong advocate for a Supreme Audit Agency. And if you look across the world, the design of the accountability system, that's why you give the Auditor General independence. Because most of these recommendations you see, if you tell the offender, go and retrieve money from yourself, most likely nothing will happen. Who is going to hold that offender responsible if they don't And a lot of these entities, whether it's Ministry of Defense or whatever, who really has power within the state to hold that person accountable? And that is why the Constitution, in its wisdom, and it's good audit practice everywhere, that you surcharge, let the person go to court and contest it, because it is against you, you are responsible. The next time, when you have to make a decision that is, you have to exercise discretion, you are going to follow the rules. So you take away the deterrent effect when you basically outsource.
He's saying that some people have won cases against the Auditor General. So he is taking a cue from that.
But that's what the court is for. Yes, you can take, to sort of make your processes a lot more, to avoid maybe judgments like that. But Domlevo won some cases, he lost some cases. That's fine, right? So you can take lessons, but it doesn't mean that your entire strategy should be based on what the High Court said about any particular issue. So for me, and if you look at it, 14th June when he was writing on to Occupy Ghana, he was talking about setting up a committee. And we are talking about 2019.
14 June 2020.
2022. We are talking about 2019, 2020 audit reports, and we just got 2021. So for all those times, what were we doing? And as you say, by that time, even if you go back, then maybe the evidence is even not there anymore.
That's the point where the two of you were nodding in agreement to Professor Kukwasa.
Exactly. It's the process, the system for me, the PFM Act, all the powers of the Auditor General. If we were even implementing 50%, it will create a certain deterrent effect within the system, sanitize the system. At the moment, both the Auditor General and all of the institutions, even the Finance Ministry, have basically ceded all their powers, and this thing is going on. So anyway, as we say, Monday, we are going to picket. For us, it's just a starting point.
Who is invited?
Everybody is invited. We are trying to negotiate with the police to meet behind the Holy Spirit Cathedral office where O'Reilly used to be. That's where we'll gather, and we'll head, out to the ministries, right? And we want Ghanaians, because you see, it's our taxpayers' money.
For those of you who may not have the opportunity to be physically present at the Auditor General's offices, you are simply supposed to wear red.
Yes.
Take a photograph.
Yeah, it's Red Monday.
In red. It's a Red Monday, and put it on your social media.
Samson, I really wish this picketing never happened.
Really?
Really, I really wish it never happened.
Part of the blame is being shifted. Part of the blame is being put at your doorstep.
Yes, and
you are the internal,
audit agency.
Audit agency. So you should pluck all of this before it even gets to the.
Yes, we do. We are doing our best. And Samson, people must understand that the Auditor General performed financial and performance audit. The 17 billion we're talking about is only on the audit of public corporations.
Yes, that's right.
The Auditor General also submitted an audit on the Ministry, Department, and agencies.
That's right.
The use of District Assembly's Common Fund, that of MMDAs, pre-tertiary educational institutions, technical universities, and then the public boards and corporations. What I think the Auditor General did not do is to give an update on the progress made towards implementing the previous recommendations, because we have made some recoveries. And you see, when you are making such recoveries and you are making modest gains, people must know. On his report on the management and utilization of common fund, for instance, the irregularities has reduced by 14%. That of public boards has increased by 36%, I can imagine. But that 17 billion, Samson, people must also know that the composition, it is recoverable debt, 10 billion, and then 6 billion is as a result of electricity supply to consumers by NEDCO and VRE, which are supposed to be recovered. So if these institutions were recovering, there was no need for us to go to IMF. MDA's irregularities reduced by 47.3%. And even with that, GRA is culpable. GRA was supposed to have collected some monies from oil marketing companies, which is accounted to about 91.5% of their irregularities. When you come to pre-university education, it has also reduced by 55.8%. And even with that one, Get Fund did not send some monies they are supposed to send for project to be completed. For that matter, Auditor General flagged it. When it comes to the technical university, that is a serious matter. It has increased by 166%. And there too, they have an excuse. Why? Kofodia Technical University is saying that Get Fund was supposed to send some money for them to complete a project. The money did not go, for which reason the project cost will have to go high by another 20 million. Come to the MMDAs. It has reduced by it has increased by 0.47%. And you know what constituted that? Completed projects not in use and the uncompleted projects. So I think that the Auditor General going forward would have to give us progress towards implementing this recommendation. At the IAA, as at 31st July 2022, we have been able to follow through to implement 2,766 audit recommendations. And we have saved the country 665 million cedis. These are the things we want the Auditor General to include in the report so people will know that all is not lost.
Sure, and we have to track that progress.
That's right.
I think for us going forward, that's the progress we have to
Great.
track.
Thank you so very much. And forgive us, we couldn't read the messages you sent. A lot of them. And Kofi Bento says, let's call a spade a spade. These are the leaders of our state looting our state property, bought with poor people's taxes. Yes, they have made laws to legalize it, but it's still plunder, and it's wrong. If we don't fix these things soon, we endanger this democracy. Let us not wait for someone to ride on popular anger and upset things, and then line up people, and I can't read the rest of them. Kofi, we don't want to get there. Whatever the situation, we never want to get there. And my guests on this show this morning have been Professor Stephen Kweku Asare, Fellow CDD Ghana and DND Fellow for Public Law and Justice. Dr. Eric Odrosine is Director General, Internal Audit Agency, that's the IAA. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the CDD. And he, together with Dr. Daniel Apia, who is Lecturer, Department of Public Administration, University of Ghana, Business School and Political Governance Expert, will be picketing at the Auditor General's office on Monday. If you can't, they say simply wear red, take a picture, and post it on social media. We also spoke to Professor Godwin Awendare, Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Ghana, in charge of academic and student affairs. Dr. Norris Bequin, University Relations Officer, KNUST. Dr. Ahmed Jinapo, Deputy Director General, the GTEC. Justice Kofi was supposed to join us. He's President, Judges and Magistrates Association, but unfortunately, we couldn't establish contact with him whilst the show was ongoing. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Have a good afternoon.